Beneath the glittering chandeliers of a winter gala, Julian Voss, a millionaire architect with a frozen heart, wanted nothing more than to bury his past. But fate had other plans when he locked eyes with Clara, the ex-wife he once loved fiercely, now standing with four identical boys who mirrored him perfectly. Amid whispers of jealousy, betrayals from enemies, and even her own family, Julian faces a choice. Can he mend a love long broken, protect the sons he never knew, and rediscover himself in the storm of his life? A journey of tears, hope, and redemption begins the moment their gazes collide again. The Regal Crown Hotel glittered like a jewel against Seattle's winter sky, its ballroom awash in the glow of crystal chandeliers and the hum of expensive laughter. Julian Voss adjusted the cuffs of his tailored black suit, nodding absently at a tech mogul's half-hearted quip about sustainable skyscrapers. At 38, he'd built Voss Innovations into a name synonymous with architectural brilliance, those soaring glass and steel wonders that dotted city skylines worldwide. Tonight, though, he was alone, no Sophia on his arm. She's swamped with a last-minute project, he told the curious glances, a smooth lie that rolled off his tongue. Truth was, her constant questions about his late nights had started to grate, and he'd wanted the breathing room. He scanned the room, the usual mix of power players and their glittering plus ones, sipping champagne and pretending the charity auction mattered more than the networking. A server drifted by with a tray of flutes, and Julian reached for one, letting the cold glass steady him. That's when he saw her. Across the sea of sequins and tuxedos, Clara stood out. Not because she sparkled, but because she didn't. Her emerald green dress was elegant but understated. Her auburn hair swept loosely over one shoulder. She looked the same as she had 4 years ago, the last time he'd seen her sign those divorce papers with a trembling hand. But it wasn't Clara who stopped his heart mid-beat. It was the 4 little boys hovering around her, each maybe 4 years old, their dark curls bouncing as they tugged at her dress or pointed at the ice sculptures. 4 identical faces, 4 pairs of piercing blue eyes. His eyes, staring out from under those curls, right down to the faint dimple on their left cheeks that he'd inherited from his own father. Julian's hand froze, champagne forgotten, the room tilting as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He blinked hard, certain it was a trick of the light or too many late nights sketching blueprints. But no, they were still there. Miniatures of him in tiny suits, laughing and oblivious to the storm brewing in his chest. "Julian, you okay?" The voice of a board member, some guy named Richard, cut through the haze, but Julian barely registered it. His feet moved before his brain caught up, carrying him across the ballroom, weaving through the crowd like a man chasing a ghost. Clara glanced up mid-laugh, her smile fading as their eyes locked. The color drained from her face, and she instinctively stepped in front of the boys, as if she could shield them from what was coming. Too late. One of them, a bold little guy in a navy jacket, peeked out from behind her and tilted his head, staring right at Julian. "Mom, who's that man?" His voice was small but clear, slicing through the murmur of the gala like a blade. The other 3 turned in sync, 4 sets of blue eyes fixing on him with unguarded curiosity. Julian stopped a few feet away, his breath shallow, his pulse hammering so loud he swore the whole room could hear it. Up close, there was no denying it. Those faces were his, down to the way their brows furrowed slightly, just like he did when he was puzzling out a design flaw. "Clara?" he said, his voice rough, barely above a whisper. "What the hell is this?" She straightened, her hands resting protectively on 2 of the boys' shoulders. Her gaze didn't waver, though her lips trembled just enough to betray her nerves. "Julian," she replied, soft but steady, "I knew this day would come eventually." "Are they?" He couldn't finish, the words sticking in his throat, but the question hung there, heavy and undeniable. The boys watched him, silent now, as if they sensed the weight of the moment. "Yes," Clara said simply, her voice cutting through his chaos. Meet Liam, Ethan, Milo, and Noah, your sons. Julian's world shrank to the 5 people standing in front of him. Clara and those 4 little boys who wore his face like a mirror. The chatter of the gala faded to a dull hum, the clink of glasses and fake laughter swallowed by the roaring in his ears. He stared at the kids, their tiny suits wrinkled from play, their blue eyes wide and searching. Liam, the one who'd spoken, stepped forward, tugging at Clara's dress again. "Mom, why is he looking at us like that?" he asked, his tone more curious than afraid. Clara's hand tightened on his shoulder, her lips parting as if to answer, but Julian cut in first. "Clara, we need to talk. Now." His voice came out sharper than he intended, laced with a mix of fury and something he couldn't name. Panic, maybe, or a desperate need to understand. She hesitated, glancing around at the sea of faces starting to turn their way, then nodded stiffly. "Follow me," she said, guiding the boys toward a quieter corner near the ballroom's towering windows. The snow outside dusted the glass, a stark contrast to the heat building under Julian's skin. He trailed behind, every step heavy, his mind racing through the math. 4 years since the divorce. 4-year-olds. It lined up too perfectly to be a coincidence, and yet the idea of it, 4 sons he'd never known, felt like a punch to the gut. They reached an alcove, partially hidden by velvet drapes, and Clara turned to face him. The boys clustered around her, Milo half hiding behind her leg, Ethan studying Julian with a furrowed brow like he was some puzzle to solve. "Go ahead," she said, her voice steady but her eyes wary. "Who are they?" Julian demanded, though he already knew the answer. He needed to hear it again, needed her to say it so he could wrap his head around the impossible. "I told you," Clara replied, lifting her chin. "They're yours. Liam, Ethan, Milo, and Noah, our sons." She gestured to each one in turn. Liam in navy, Ethan in forest green, Milo in soft gray, Noah in a bright red jacket that matched his restless energy. Noah was already fidgeting, bouncing on his toes like he couldn't stand still. Julian's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. 4 years, Clara. 4 damn years, and you didn't tell me? How could you keep this from me? His voice rose, drawing a flicker of unease from the boys. Milo shrank back further, and Clara shot Julian a warning look. "Keep your voice down," she hissed, stepping closer to shield them. "I tried, Julian. You have no idea how hard I tried. After the divorce, I called your office dozens of times. Your assistant, Lydia, wasn't it? She blocked me every time, said you didn't want to hear from me. I sent letters, emails, even showed up at your building once. Security escorted me out like I was some stalker. You'd moved on, and I was left with 4 babies and no way to reach you." Her words hit him like a freight train. Lydia, of course. She'd been fiercely loyal, screening his calls, shredding anything that smelled like drama after the divorce. He told her to keep Clara out of his life. He'd been raw, angry, drowning in work to forget the mess they'd made of their marriage. But this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "That's not possible," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "I wouldn't know." "Would you?" Clara's eyes flashed, a spark of the fire he remembered from their fights. "You were building your empire, Julian. I was just the ex-wife you didn't have time for anymore." He opened his mouth to argue, but Ethan interrupted, tugging at Clara's hand. "Mom, I'm hungry," he said, his voice small but firm. Noah chimed in, "Me too," while Milo peeked out, silent but watching Julian with those haunting blue eyes. Liam just stood there, arms crossed, staring like he was sizing Julian up. "Give me a sec," Julian said, waving over a passing server. "Can you take them to grab some of those pastries I saw near the dessert table, the chocolate ones?" The server smiled, extending a hand to the boys. Clara nodded her approval, and they shuffled off, casting backward glances at Julian like he was some mystery they hadn't cracked yet. Alone now, Julian turned back to Clara, his anger simmering down to a dull ache. You named them yourself, he said, the realization sinking in. Didn't have much choice, she replied, a bitter edge creeping into her tone. Quadruplets aren't exactly a walk in the park. I did what I had to. He ran a hand through his hair, the weight of it all crashing down. I would have helped, Clara, you know that. Do I? She shot back, her voice trembling now. You made it pretty clear back then that Voss Innovations was your real family. I wasn't sure you'd want this one. Before he could respond, a flash went off nearby, someone snapping a photo. Julian's stomach dropped. This wasn't just his past catching up. It was about to become everybody's business. Julian barely had time to process the flash of that camera before a familiar voice sliced through the hum of the ballroom. There you are, darling. Sophia's heels clicked against the polished floor as she swept toward him, her crimson dress hugging her curves like a second skin. Her blonde hair was pulled into a sleek updo, every strand in place, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She'd arrived late, unplanned, uninvited, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Julian's stomach tightened as she closed the distance, her gaze darting from him to Clara, and then to the four boys trailing back from the dessert table, chocolate smudged on their hands and faces. Who's this? Sophia's tone was syrupy sweet, but there was a razor edge beneath it. She stopped beside Julian, her hand sliding possessively onto his arm, nails digging in just enough to make a point. The boys froze, clutching their pastries, their blue eyes flicking between the adults like they sensed a storm brewing. Clara straightened, her expression hardening. Sophia, right? She said, her voice cool and even. I'm Clara, Julian's ex-wife. She didn't flinch as Sophia's grip on Julian tightened. Didn't blink as the air grew thick with tension. Ex-wife, Sophia repeated, her laugh sharp and brittle. She turned to Julian, her head tilting in that way she did when she was about to unravel someone. And these little ones? Don't tell me they're yours, Julian. That would be quite the surprise. Her eyes narrowed, taking in the boys. Liam wiping chocolate off his chin, Ethan studying her like she was a specimen, Milo shrinking behind Clara, Noah bouncing on his toes with restless energy. The resemblance was undeniable, and Sophia wasn't stupid. They are, Julian said, his voice low but firm. He pulled his arm free from her grasp, stepping slightly closer to Clara and the boys. My sons. Liam, Ethan, Milo, and Noah. The words felt strange on his tongue, new and heavy, but saying them out loud locked something into place inside him. Sophia's smile vanished, her face paling as the truth sank in. Your sons, she hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more venom than a shout. You've got to be kidding me. 4 of them? With her? She shot Clara a look that could have shattered glass, then turned back to Julian, her composure cracking. What the hell have you been hiding from me? I didn't know, he snapped, his patience thinning. Not until 10 minutes ago, so save the interrogation for later. He caught another flash out of the corner of his eye, someone else snapping a photo, probably a guest with a phone and too much curiosity. The situation was spiraling and fast. Sophia laughed, a cold, jagged sound. Oh, this is rich. The great Julian Voss, blindsided by his own secret family. How do you think this looks, huh? To me, to your investors, to everyone in this room? She gestured wildly at the crowd, some of whom were now openly staring, whispering behind their champagne flutes. Sophia, stop, Julian said, his tone steel. This isn't the place. He glanced at the boys, who'd gone quiet, their earlier chatter replaced by wide-eyed uncertainty. Liam stepped closer to Clara, his small hand slipping into hers, and Julian felt a pang of something fierce and protective twist in his chest. But Sophia wasn't done. No, I think it's the perfect place. You've been lying to me, Julian, playing the devoted boyfriend while, what, you've got a whole life stashed away? She turned to Clara, her voice dripping with disdain. "And you? What's your game? Showing up now with these kids? Looking for a payout?" "That's enough," Clara cut in, her voice sharp enough to slice through Sophia's tirade. "I don't want his money. I never did. These are my sons, and they carry their father's name because it's their right, not because I'm after anything from him." Sophia's mouth opened, then closed. Her fury momentarily derailed. Before she could recover, Julian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his heart sinking as he read the message from an unknown number. A blurry photo of him, Clara, and the boys in the alcove, captioned, "How much is this worth to you?" His jaw tightened. Someone was watching, waiting to cash in on this mess. "Who's texting you now?" Sophia demanded, peering over his shoulder. She saw the image, and her eyes widened before narrowing again. "Perfect, just perfect. Enjoy your little reunion, Julian. We're done." She spun on her heel, storming toward the exit, her dress trailing behind her like a streak of blood against the marble floor. Julian watched her go, his mind a tangle of anger and dread. The boys clustered closer to Clara, Noah tugging at her dress. "Mom, why's she so mad?" he asked, his voice small. Clara knelt, brushing a curl from his forehead. "She's just confused, sweetheart. Don't worry." But her eyes met Julian's, and he saw the worry there too. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Julian's head was still spinning as he ushered Clara and the boys out of the alcove, away from the prying eyes and flashing phones. The ballroom felt suffocating now, every glance from the crowd a needle under his skin. "We can't stay here," he muttered, his voice tight. Clara nodded, herding the boys toward a side exit that led to a quieter lounge area. The kids trailed behind her, Liam clutching a half-eaten pastry, Ethan wiping chocolate off his hands onto his green jacket, Milo sticking close to her side, and Noah darting ahead like he was on some grand adventure. The lounge was dimly lit, all plush chairs and soft jazz filtering through hidden speakers. A stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind. Julian shut the door, the click loud in the sudden stillness, and turned to face Clara. The boys plopped onto a leather sofa, their small frames dwarfed by it, watching him with those eerily familiar blue eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Okay," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Start from the beginning. Everything." Clara sat beside the boys, smoothing her dress over her knees. She looked tired, the kind of tired that went deeper than a late night, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "After we signed the papers, I found out I was pregnant. A few weeks later, the doctor told me it was quadruplets. I was terrified, Julian. Alone, no job, no idea how I'd manage. I tried reaching you, called your office over and over, sent letters, even tracked down your old email. Nothing got through. Your assistant made it crystal clear you wanted me gone." "Lydia," Julian said, the name bitter on his tongue. He remembered her efficiency, the way she'd taken charge after the divorce, filtering out anything that might drag him back into the wreckage of his marriage. "She never told me, not a damn thing." Clara's eyes softened, just a fraction. "I figured it was something like that after a while, but by then the boys were born and I couldn't keep chasing you. I moved back to Seattle, got a bookkeeping gig, and we made it work. Me and them." She glanced at the kids, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "They're a handful, but they're mine." "Ours," Julian corrected, the word slipping out before he could stop it. He crouched down, eye level with the boys, studying them up close. Liam met his gaze head-on, bold and unflinching. "You're the leader, huh?" Julian asked, nodding at him. Liam shrugged, wiping his sticky hands on his pants. "Someone's got to keep them in line." Ethan piped up next, pushing his glasses up his nose. "I'm the smart one. I fix stuff." He held up a toy car he'd pulled from his pocket, one wheel wobbly but still attached. Milo stayed quiet, his gray jacket bunched around him like a shield, but he peeked out long enough to murmur, "I don't like loud things." His voice was so soft, Julian almost missed it. Noah, meanwhile, was already off the sofa, spinning in a circle until he stumbled into Julian's knee. "I'm fast," he declared, grinning wide enough to show a missing front tooth. "Fastest one here." Julian couldn't help it. A laugh escaped him, raw and unexpected. 4 kids, 4 little pieces of him, each so different despite those identical faces. He straightened, looking back at Clara. Why tonight? Why bring them here? "I didn't plan it," she said, her tone defensive. "My boss dragged me along, said it'd be good for networking. I couldn't find a sitter last minute, so they came with me. I never thought you'd be here." "Fate's got a hell of a sense of humor," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. His phone buzzed again and he fished it out, dreading what he'd see. Another message from that unknown number. "Tick-tock, Voss. Price goes up at midnight." His gut twisted. Someone had leverage, and they weren't wasting time. "Who's that?" Clara asked, noticing the shift in his expression. "Trouble," he said, pocketing the phone. "Someone saw us, took pictures. They're threatening to sell them unless I pay up." He paced a few steps, his mind racing. "I need to know you're safe, all of you. This could blow up fast." "We've been fine without you for 4 years," Clara said, but there was no bite in it, just exhaustion. "What's your plan?" "I don't know yet," he admitted, stopping to face her. "But I'm not letting anyone turn my kids into a headline. Not Sophia, not some sleazy photographer, nobody." He glanced at the boys, who were now poking at each other, giggling over some shared secret. "Tell me about them. What do they like? What do they need?" Clara hesitated, then softened. "Liam's into building things. Blocks, models, anything he can stack. Ethan's obsessed with gadgets, always taking stuff apart. Milo's quiet, loves animals, hates crowds. Noah, well, he never stops moving. Ever." She paused, her eyes locking with his. "They don't know you, Julian. Not yet. But they deserve to." "Yeah," he said, his throat tight. "They do." He knelt again, closer this time, letting the boys size him up. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Are you staying?" he asked, all blunt innocence. "For now," Julian replied, meeting those blue eyes. His eyes. "I'm not going anywhere tonight." But even as he said it, he knew the real fight was just beginning. Whoever was out there with that camera had lit a fuse, and it was only a matter of time before it blew. Julian stood in the lounge, the soft jazz doing nothing to calm the storm churning inside him. Clara sat with the boys, her hands folded tightly in her lap, while Liam and Ethan argued in hushed tones over who'd eaten the last chocolate pastry. Milo curled up against her, his gray jacket bunched around his ears, and Noah sprawled across the sofa, kicking his legs like he was itching to run. Julian's phone buzzed again. Another message from that damn unknown number. $500 K by dawn, or the world knows. He clenched his jaw, shoving it back into his pocket. This wasn't just a random opportunist. Someone had planned this. "I need to make a call," he said, stepping toward the corner of the room. Clara nodded, her eyes following him with a mix of worry and something else. Trust, maybe, or at least the ghost of it. He dialed Victor, his head of security at Voss Innovations, a guy who'd handled everything from corporate espionage to overzealous paparazzi. "Vic, it's me. I've got a situation. Photos from the gala, me, my ex, and kids. Someone's trying to blackmail me. Find out who." Victor's voice crackled through, calm but clipped. "Got it. Any suspects?" "Start with Sophia," Julian said, glancing back at Clara. "She showed up, saw everything, and stormed out. Timing's too perfect." He paused, then added, "And check the guest list. Whoever took those shots was inside." "On it," Victor replied. Sit tight, I'll have something by morning. The line went dead, and Julian turned back to Clara, who was watching him like she could hear every word. Sophia? She asked, keeping her voice low so the boys wouldn't catch it. You think she'd do this? She's pissed enough, Julian said, crossing his arms. And she's got the connections. But I don't know. Doesn't feel like her style. Too messy. She'd rather ruin me with a smile than hide behind a burner phone. He rubbed his temples, the weight of the night pressing down. I've got people looking into it. For now, we need to get you and the boys out of here. Clara frowned, brushing a curl from Milo's forehead. We're not your problem to fix, Julian. I've handled worse. This isn't about you handling it, he shot back, sharper than he meant to. This is about me not letting some bastard use my kids as leverage. You're stuck with me on this one. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded, relenting. His phone rang, Victor again, faster than expected. Boss, you're not gonna like this. Trace the number. It's a throwaway, but the signal pinged near your office an hour ago, and Sophia's car was spotted pulling into Derek Hale's building 10 minutes after she left the gala. Derek Hale? Julian's blood ran cold. Hale was his biggest rival, a cutthroat developer who'd been gunning for Voss Innovations contracts for years. The Westridge project, a massive eco-tower deal, had pitted them head-to-head, and Julian had the edge. Until now. They're working together? Looks like it, Victor said. I'm digging deeper. Hale's got a guy on payroll who was at the gala. Photographer, freelance. Matches the timing of those shots. Julian cursed under his breath, pieces snapping into place. Keep digging. I want everything. Texts, calls, bank records. Nail them. He hung up, turning to Clara. It's not just Sophia. Derek Hale's in on it. They're trying to tank me before the Westridge bid locks in next week. Clara's eyes widened. Hale? The guy who tried to poach your team last year? Yeah, Julian said, pacing now. He's got the motive and the muscle. This isn't about money. It's about burying me. His mind raced, blueprints of a different kind forming. How to protect his company, his kids, his sanity. I need to see Sophia, get the truth out of her. He grabbed his coat, but Clara stood, blocking his path. You're not storming off half-cocked. What about us? The boys are exhausted, and I'm not dragging them through a media circus. Julian stopped, her words pulling him back. She was right. He couldn't leave them exposed. I'll get you to my place. The penthouse. It's secure, off the radar. Then I'll deal with Sophia. She hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but you're explaining this to them. She nodded toward the boys, who were now watching him with open curiosity. Julian crouched down, forcing a calm he didn't feel. Hey guys, how'd you like to see a really cool house? Big windows, high up, like a tower. We're gonna stay there tonight. Noah's eyes lit up. Like a castle? Close enough, Julian said, managing a smile. Liam tilted his head, skeptical. Are you coming too? He asked, his voice testing him. Yeah, Julian promised. I'm coming too. He stood, meeting Clara's gaze. Let's move. 20 minutes later, they were in his car, the boys strapped into booster seats he'd had his driver scramble to find. The city blurred past, snow dusting the streets, but Julian's focus was razor-sharp. He pulled up to Sophia's loft, a sleek building in the arts district, and spotted her car parked out front. Wait here, he told Clara, stepping out into the cold. She answered the door in a silk robe, her hair loose now, but her expression was all ice. What do you want, Julian? Come to grovel? Cut the crap, he said, stepping inside uninvited. You're working with Hale. Those photos? Who'd you give them to? Sophia laughed, sharp and hollow. You think I'd stoop that low? I'm hurt, darling. I didn't know about your little family until tonight. If anyone's playing dirty, it's not me." "Then why'd you run to Hale?" he pressed, watching her flinch. Just a flicker, but enough. "He's a friend," she said, too fast. "I needed to vent, that's all." Julian didn't buy it, but before he could push harder, his phone buzzed. "Victor, Hale's guy just sold the pics to a tabloid. Hits tomorrow." He locked eyes with Sophia, fury boiling over. "You're lying, and I'm done playing nice." He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Back in the car, Clara read his face. "Bad?" "Worse," he said, starting the engine. "It's war now." The drive to Julian's penthouse felt endless, the city lights streaking past like blurred warnings. Clara sat beside him, her arms crossed, staring out the window while the boys chattered in the back. Liam was grilling Ethan about how high the tower house would be. Milo was whispering to himself about whether it had a dog, random but sweet, and Noah was singing some made-up song about castles, his voice bouncing off the car's leather interior. Julian gripped the wheel tighter, his mind split between the tabloid bomb about to drop and the 4 kids who'd just upended his life. He couldn't shake Victor's text. The photos were sold. By morning, his face and theirs would be plastered everywhere. He pulled into the underground garage, the heavy steel gate clanging shut behind them, a temporary shield against the world. The penthouse was on the top floor of a sleek high-rise he'd designed himself. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a view of Seattle's skyline that usually calmed him. Tonight, it felt sterile, too quiet for the chaos he was dragging in. Clara stepped out, helping the boys unbuckle, and they piled into the elevator, their small shoes scuffing the polished floor. Noah pressed every button he could reach before Julian gently nudged him aside. "Just one, buddy. Top floor." The doors slid open, and the boys spilled into the living room, their gasps echoing off the glass walls. "Whoa!" Liam ran to the window, pressing his nose against it. "It's like we're flying!" Ethan joined him, calculating something under his breath, while Milo hung back, clutching Clara's hand. Noah darted around, already testing how fast he could lap the space. "It's big," Clara said, her voice carrying an edge of unease as she took in the stark white walls and cold marble counters. "You live here alone?" "Most of the time," Julian replied, shrugging off his coat. "Not much point in filling it up when I'm always working." He caught her look, half pity, half judgment, and turned away, digging through a cabinet for anything kid-friendly. He found a box of crackers and some juice pouches he'd stashed for late-night meetings. "This'll do for now. I'll order something proper later." Clara took the snacks, kneeling to pass them out. The boys swarmed her, Liam snagging 2 crackers like a little commander, Ethan inspecting the juice pouch's design, Milo nibbling quietly, Noah gulping his down in seconds. Julian watched, a strange warmth creeping through the knot in his chest. They were a unit, a messy, loud, perfect unit, and he was still an outsider, trying to find his place. "We can't stay here forever," Clara said, standing up, brushing crumbs off her dress. "What's your next move?" "First, I keep you safe," he said, his voice firm. "Tomorrow, I'll deal with Hale and Sophia. Victor's got enough to bury them. Financial trails, witness statements. I'm not letting this touch the boys." He glanced at them, now sprawled on his rug, arguing over who'd build the best cracker tower. "They don't deserve this." Clara softened just a little. "No, they don't. But neither do you, Julian. Not all of it." Before he could respond, a sharp thud came from the balcony door. Julian spun around, heart lurching as he saw a shadow move outside, a figure with a camera, lens pressed against the glass. "Get down!" he barked, lunging for the boys. Clara yanked them behind the sofa, her arms wrapping around Milo and Noah, while Liam and Ethan ducked low, wide-eyed but silent. Julian hit the lights, plunging the room into darkness, and crept to the window. The figure bolted, disappearing over the railing. Probably some hired creep with a drone or a grappling hook. His penthouse was supposed to be untouchable, but Hale clearly didn't care about boundaries. He slammed the blinds shut, his hands shaking with rage. "That's it," he growled, turning back to Clara. "We're moving you tomorrow, somewhere they can't find." Clara stood, brushing hair from her face, the boys clinging to her. "Where? Another tower?" "No," he said, his mind already mapping it out. "My place on the coast. Small, off-grid, secure. You'll be safe there." He knelt, meeting Liam's steady gaze. "You guys ever been to the beach?" Liam nodded slowly. "Once. It was fun." "Good," Julian said, forcing a smile. "We'll make it fun again. But tonight, you're crashing here. Pick a spot, couch, floor, whatever works." The boys scrambled to claim territory, Noah dragging a blanket off an armchair, Ethan stacking pillows like a fort. Milo stayed close to Clara, but his eyes flicked to Julian, curious now instead of scared. Clara watched him, her expression unreadable. "You're jumping in deep," she said quietly. "You sure about this?" He met her gaze, the weight of it grounding him. "I've never been more sure. They're mine, Clara, and I'm done letting anyone mess with what's mine." She didn't argue, just nodded, and for the first time that night, Julian felt like he might actually pull this off. The coastal house was a far cry from the penthouse, a weathered cedar cottage perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, waves crashing against the rocks below. Julian had bought it years ago as a retreat, a place to sketch designs when the city got too loud, but it hadn't seen much of him since. Now, as he pulled up the gravel drive with Clara and the boys, it felt like the only safe harbor left. The morning sun glinted off the water, and the boys tumbled out of the car, their shouts mixing with the gulls overhead. Liam raced to the edge of the yard. Ethan squinted at the horizon like he was measuring it. Milo hung back near the porch, and Noah sprinted straight for the sand, kicking up dirt. Clara stepped out, shielding her eyes against the glare. "This is it?" she asked, taking in the peeling paint and wild grass. "Doesn't scream Julian Voss to me." "It's not supposed to," he said, grabbing their bags from the trunk. "It's quiet, hidden. No one's finding you here." He'd spent the night arranging it. Security sweeps, a team on standby, Victor digging deeper into Hale's moves. The tabloids had hit at dawn, just as predicted. Architect Titan's secret quadruplets splashed across every site, with grainy shots of him and the boys at the gala. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing, but point members, investors, Sophia blowing up his voicemail with venom, but he'd silenced it. The boys came first. Inside, the cottage smelled of salt and old wood, the furniture simple but sturdy. Clara set the boys up in a bedroom with 2 bunk beds, their chatter echoing down the hall as Julian unpacked what little they'd brought. He was pouring coffee when Victor called, his voice tense. "Got something big, boss. Hale's not just a rival. He's Clara's brother." Julian nearly dropped the mug. "What?" "Derek Hale, older sibling, different last name. Mom remarried after Clara was born. He's been in the background this whole time, pulling strings. The photographer? His guy. The blackmail? His idea. And those blocked messages from Clara after the divorce? He intercepted them, kept you in the dark on purpose." The room tilted, coffee forgotten. Julian gripped the counter, his mind racing back to every clash with Hale. Bidding wars, snide comments at industry events. It wasn't just business, it was personal. "Why?" he managed, his voice hoarse. "Revenge," Victor said. "He blamed you for wrecking Clara's life. Saw you as the guy who walked away and left her with nothing. When she got pregnant, he convinced her you'd never care. Fed her doubts, made sure she stopped trying to reach you." Julian's chest tightened, a mix of fury and betrayal clawing at him. He hung up, staring at the wall, then stormed down the hall. Clara was in the bedroom, tucking a blanket around Milo, who'd already claimed the bottom bunk. The other boys were wrestling over pillows, but they froze when Julian burst in, his face a thundercloud. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Outside, now." Clara frowned, brushing past him to the porch. The sea wind whipped her hair as she crossed her arms, bracing herself. "What's wrong?" "Derek Hale," he spat, watching her reaction. "Your brother. He's behind this, everything. The photos, the blackmail, keeping me from knowing about my own kids. And you knew, didn't you?" Her face went pale, eyes widening, but she didn't deny it fast enough. That was all he needed. "Jesus, Clara," he said, stepping closer, his voice breaking. "You let him do this? You let him hide them from me?" "It's not that simple," she said, her hands trembling as she hugged herself tighter. "He's my brother, Julian. After the divorce, I was a wreck, pregnant, alone, scared out of my mind. Derek was there. He said you'd never want this, that you'd fight me for them, take them away to live your perfect life. I believed him because I didn't know what else to do." "You believed him over me?" Julian's voice rose, raw and ragged. "I would have dropped everything, Clara. You think I'd have walked away from my own kids?" "I didn't know," she shouted back, tears spilling now. "You were gone, building your empire, and I was drowning. Derek swore he'd protect us, said he'd make sure you never hurt me again. When I tried calling, he told me it was pointless, said your people shut me out because you told them to. I stopped fighting because I had to survive." He turned away, staring at the ocean, his hands clenched into fists. "So you let him turn this into a weapon. He's not protecting you. He's using you to get to me. And you went along with it." "I didn't know about the blackmail," she said, stepping closer, her voice desperate. "Not until last night, when he called me after the gala. He said he'd handle it, keep the press off us. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. I swear, Julian, I never wanted this." He spun back, meeting her eyes, searching for the truth. They were red-rimmed, pleading, and he wanted to believe her. God, he did. But the sting of it cut too deep. "4 years," he said, quieter now, the fight draining out of him. "I missed 4 years because of him. Because you didn't trust me enough to try harder." She wiped her face, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. But I was scared, and he was all I had. I didn't know how to fight both of you." The door creaked open behind them, and Liam poked his head out, his curls wild from the wind. "Mom, are you okay?" His blue eyes flicked to Julian, wary but steady. "Yeah, sweetheart," Clara said, forcing a smile. "We're just talking." Julian crouched, meeting Liam's gaze. "Everything's fine, bud. Go back inside, okay?" Liam nodded, retreating, but the interruption snapped something loose in Julian. He stood, looking at Clara. "I need to see Hale end this." "What are you going to do?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Whatever it takes," he said, his tone cold. "He doesn't get to play God with my family." He walked to the car, leading her on the porch, the roar of the waves drowning out the ache in his chest. Derek had lit this fire, but Julian was damn well going to put it out, even if it meant burning everything down to do it. Julian drove back to Seattle with the taste of salt air still on his lips, the coastal house fading in the rearview. Clara's confession echoed in his head, a tangle of hurt and understanding he couldn't quite unravel. Derek had played them both, her fear, his absence, and the boys had paid the price. But as the city skyline loomed closer, his focus sharpened. This ended today. He found Derek in his office, a glass-walled monstrosity overlooking the Sound, all sharp angles and arrogance. Hale leaned back in his chair, smirking as Julian stormed in, unannounced. Well, well, Derek drawled, swirling a tumbler of whiskey. The prodigal brother-in-law, come to thank me for keeping your dirty laundry under wraps? You done, Julian said, his voice low and lethal. He tossed a folder onto the desk. Victor's handiwork, every text, payment, and shady deal linking Derek to the blackmail and the tabloid leak. That's enough to bury you. Fraud, extortion, corporate sabotage. Pick your poison. Derek's smirk faltered as he flipped through the pages, the color draining from his face. You can't prove I already did, Julian cut in, leaning forward. The photographer's talking. Your bank records are with my lawyers. And Clara, she's done covering for you. You used her, twisted her into thinking I'd steal her kids. 4 years, Derek. You stole 4 years from me. Derek slammed the folder shut, standing to match Julian's glare. You broke her, Voss. Left her with nothing while you built your little empire. I was protecting my sister. By turning her kids into a weapon? Julian's voice cracked, raw with fury. You didn't protect her, you trapped her. And me? I'd have been there if I'd known. You made damn sure I didn't. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Derek sank back into his chair, the fight leaking out of him. What do you want? He muttered. Walk away, Julian said. Drop the Westridge bid. Call off your dogs. And stay the hell away from my family. I've got enough to send you to jail, but I won't if you disappear. Derek stared at him, then nodded, a bitter twist to his mouth. Fine. You win. Julian didn't bother responding. He walked out, the door clicking shut on that chapter of his war. By the time he got back to the coast, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. The boys were on the beach, their laughter carrying over the waves. Liam directing a sandcastle project, Ethan poking at a tide pool, Milo petting a stray crab, Noah racing the surf. Clara sat on the porch steps, a mug cradled in her hands, watching them. She looked up as Julian approached, her expression cautious. How'd it go? He's out, Julian said, sitting beside her. It's over. No more games. She exhaled, relief softening her shoulders. Thank you. For them. He nodded, staring out at the boys. I'm sorry too, Clara, for not being there back then. I didn't know, but I should have fought harder to keep us from breaking. She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. We were young, dumb. I didn't trust you, and you didn't see me, but we're here now. Yeah, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. We are. He hesitated, then took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Move in with me. Not just here, not temporary. The boys need a real home, and I need them, you, in my life, for good. Her breath caught, surprise flickering across her face. Julian, that's big, he finished for her. I know, but I've spent too long building things that don't matter half as much as this. I want us to be a family, not like before, just us, the 5 of us, figuring it out. She looked at the boys, then back at him, a tear slipping free. Okay, she whispered, squeezing his hand. Let's try. The boys barreled up the steps then, sandy and wild, piling around them. Dad! Noah shouted, the words slipping out like it was the most natural thing. Julian's heart stuttered and he pulled them close, Clara laughing through her tears. For the first time, he didn't care about blueprints or skylines. This messy, loud, perfect family was everything.